I want to start this podcast by asking a basic question. I think as much as we've talked about critical theory in America over the last few years, a lot of people don't have a handle on exactly what critical theory is, what it represents, and the threat that it is to Western civilization.
Right. It sounds good if you compare it to critical thinking. We should be critical thinkers. We should test truth claims through logic and evidence. We should be careful to not fall for logical fallacies or ideological platitudes and so on. However, the word critical theory ultimately goes back to Marxism. So Marx and Engels developed their revolutionary philosophy in the mid to late 19th century, and they believed that society was incessantly one of economic conflict, where the owners are oppressing and exploiting the workers. And eventually this would lead to a revolution in which the workers would overthrow the systems of power and create what was called a dictatorship of the proletariat. And eventually this would pass away and there would be no class divisions because the engine of oppression would be gone, namely private property and profit making. Now, if you fast forward sometime to Frankfurt, Germany in the 20s and 30s, there were a group of Marxists, and everyone I'm talking about is an atheist. Marx and Engels said the critique of religion is the beginning of all social critique. They were ardent, adamant atheists and opponents of all religion, particularly Christianity. But if you fast forward to about the late 20s and 30s in Frankfurt, Germany, you had thinkers like Herbert Marcuse and Max Horkheimer, Erich Fromm, and others. And they realized that Marx and Engels' predictions had not come true, that the working class had not fomented revolution from the bottom up to overthrow the tyrannical landlords. There had been revolutionary and socialist activity, but it really didn't play out according to the Marxist account of things. So they said, well, we have to remain Marxists. We will remain atheists, but we need to deepen the critique. We need to go beyond economic exploitation and talk about cultural exploitation. So critical theory was developed as a type of updating Marxism. You can call it cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism. And people like Herbert Marcuse and others said that the level of oppression is far deeper than just property and profit. So if you are a person of color, you are intrinsically oppressed by any Western sort of democratic system. And if you are a person who is not of the sexual majorities, if you're a sexual minority, then you are oppressed also. So basically the idea was, let's broaden the net and talk not just about people who don't make a lot of money, the workers, but let's talk about those who are not conforming to typical mores of society about gender, and let's extend it also to people of color. And the idea is that the white, to use a more modern term, heteronormative majority are oppressing everyone else simply by virtue of being part of this group. So critical theory deals with groups. It doesn't deal with individuals as having unique value in the sight of God. That's a Christian view, and you cannot support that outside of a Christian or Jewish worldview. And remember, we're talking about atheists. So they see what they call injustice in society, and some of what they point out is right, but they don't understand the human condition, and they don't understand the strengths of a constitutional republic, as we have in the United States. So what you saw in the summer of 2020 with the George Floyd riots was the idea that America is fundamentally corrupt and it has to be torn down, even burned down, even literally burned down. And in the book, I quote an author who was interviewed on National Public Radio by the name of Vicky Osterweel. She wrote a book called In Defense of Looting. When I use the word looting, I mean the mass expropriation of property, mass shoplifting during a moment of upheaval or riot. That's the thing I'm defending. She says this on National Public Radio, which is supported by our tax dollars, and she was not given any challenge by the host. So the idea is that the whole structure of society is oppressive. Wealth is concentrated in white males mostly. And so if you don't have a great concentration of wealth, especially if you're poorer or you're a person of color, female, whatever, then you have a right to expropriate what has been taken from you. So there's no sense of property rights, no sense that the structures of American civilization can accommodate social change, such as the philosophy of the Declaration of Independence that God has given us inalienable rights, such as the First Amendment, that we have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, assembly, and so on. They really do want to fundamentally transform America because it is intrinsically and inexorably oppressive. So the term you hear is systemic racism.
If you're not horrified, you should be, because the relentless assaults on sanity and common sense by woke madness have now reached a fevered pitch. That's why the upcoming special edition of the Christian Research Journal tackles the dangerous social and mental disease of wokeism head on. To receive your copy, visit equip.org. That's equip.org, or call 888-7000-CRI. That's 888-7000-CRI.